It's like on an airplane, you put the mask on first and then you put on the passenger. And it's not being narcissistic. It's just, you know, it's that reality is you got to take care of yourself. That's why I like your podcast and what you stand for is you're given the tools so that your self-worth starts coming out, because by building it up in your abilities, then you can help others.
Let's impact some men today. I think we're gonna do a great job.
What's going on, guys? Welcome to the Modern Man Podcast, where we connect men in pursuit of their potential. I encourage you to join us as we embrace discomfort, cultivate community, and put wind in each other's sails. Now, if you're ready to take your personal and professional growth to the next level, please be sure to share, subscribe, and like the podcast. And also don't forget to check out the Noble Knights Mastermind group, where you can find the support, the accountability, and the mentorship you need to achieve your goals. Join us and become a part of a community of like-minded men on a mission to elevate their capacity for life. And I'm excited to get some wind in our sails from my guest today, entrepreneur, corporate culture coach, real estate developer, author, and founder of Exodus Place out of Grand Rapids, Michigan, Rob Munger, joining us on the podcast. Rob, thank you for taking the time to be on today.
Hey, thank you, Ted. It's exciting to be here.
Absolutely. And I want to make sure to give you an opportunity to talk directly to the audience. Introduce yourself in your own words, and then we can kind of jump into the topic of today. So please, Rob, let me step aside and let you address the audience.
Well, thank you. I'm Rob Munger. We're located in Grand Rapids, Michigan. I live in a little suburb out of Grand Rapids. Have a passion for making a positive difference in other people's lives. It's just a huge focus, and just love your podcast and what you stand for, Ted.
Thank you, man. Thank you. And speaking of the podcast, we talk a lot of growth, entrepreneurship, finances, fitness, nutrition, really all things encompassing us being the best men we can be. But also we talk about the issues that men face. And for this podcast and leaning into some of your expertise in the work that you do specifically with homeless men, before we jumped on the call, just some quick research. From 2018 to 2022, about 327,000 people lived in shelters. That does not include the homeless population. In 2023, the homeless population was 653,104, 68% of which men. This is something that has increased across our country, homelessness. And I just want to maybe just jump in first and get a glimpse of what first captured you into this work of with Exodus Place, providing transitional housing for men. What was the first nugget that grabbed your attention of this work?
Well, honestly, I wasn't ever going to be involved with nonprofits. My wife and I donated to nonprofits, love to donate, but I wasn't going to be part of the Kumbaya group because I didn't saw a lot of love, but I always questioned the outcomes. What happened with me, Ted, is it was an October day in 2007 in Michigan. We have these gray out days. I mean, it's misty. You said you were from Saginaw at one point, but so you probably get it, and you were smart and you moved south. I'm not quite as smart. And so this guy was, Tim McCann was holding a sign up, said, "We'll work for food." And it was a Saturday morning early, so my kids were still sleeping. My wife was sleeping. I thought, well, I'm going to pull over and just see what his story is. And he says, "I'll work for food. I want to get out of being homeless, and I have a felony on me." And it really was a prompting from God, I think, is what really happened. And I ended up putting Tim to work in my development company. I thought I was being the white knight, like I was the savior. I was coming to help him. And I'm from more of the country rural, so I've driven a 4x4 before it was popular, type of thing, and lived on, bigger, acreage. And so I thought, you know, with my finances, my knowledge and everything, I was helping him out. Oh boy, about a week and a half in, all of a sudden I realized God put this guy in my life to help me, not as much for me to help him. Because he started telling me the story of, you know, getting caught with pot. And back then it was, you got put in juvie and so he got in trouble. Then it escalated. And then, that self-talk that you have, well, I'm not good enough. It was, his father had died in a bad drug deal. His mom got married and the stepdad didn't like him. And so, hey, I'm not worthy. I'm not good. And it just escalated to the point where he got in prison and then he got out. And that's where I connected with him. I realized if I was in that same environment, I would have ended up probably pretty darn close. We can all make our own choices, but back 15 years ago, when you got out and you had a felony, it's not like the job market is today. You just don't get a job, and then if you don't have the education, you graduate from high school. So all of a sudden, it became a calling for me, and Tim worked for me for about 8 weeks, and then he started drinking, and you got happy drunks and you got the bad drunks. Tim was a bad drunk. He was mean. And so, but we'd become friends. And I said, hey, let's get you to the rescue mission. They have a drug alcohol program. He got down there. He called up the next day or 2 days later and says, hey, they said I need a mentor. And I'm not super fast, quick. I go, that's great. Yeah, I want you to be the mentor. Well, this is how anti-downtown city I am. I'm really a country guy. I had a friend that was on the board of directors for the rescue mission pick him up and take him. I refused to go downtown. And we're just in little Grand Rapids, but it's a decent sized town. And it led from that to being his mentor to getting on the board of directors at the rescue mission. And then all of a sudden, the finances at the rescue mission were failing, and the executive director resigned. And the board said, I said, hey, at this point, Tim's left because he got in trouble for drinking. And I figured, hey, I did my God thing. I've got my check mark to go to heaven. I've done my good thing. And, I figured the rescue mission would sell and, we can move on. Because we had another rescue mission in town, we could merge them. And the board members followed me out to my truck and they said, hey, 3 of them said, you know who should run this place? I said, I have no idea. And they go, we think you should. So really, I don't know. I feel like the Holy Spirit and God just kind of led me. There must be something that people have seen in me that, got me to where I'm at. And I love helping people. Okay. Mm-hmm. I have a neighbor, we moved in and all of a sudden he kept coming over and helping me. And talk about a weird feeling. I'm the one that likes to help others. And this guy kept coming over. Brought us fresh fish, we're on Lake Michigan, so salmon and the guy just keeps, so it's an awkward thing. So I guess naturally, long story is I like to help others. And so it just kind of started walking myself down through there. And I ended up turning around Guiding Light Mission. They were going to close. And then ultimately, this where we're at today, Exodus Place, was set to be donated to Guiding Light Mission. And at the time, the board of directors said, "Hey, you just got us out of the fire. We, you know, we don't want a chance of, because Exodus Place is 38,000 square feet. It's got 84 rooms, so it's a sizable endeavor." And so I ended up resigning, and then 2 weeks later had a God moment and said I should do Exodus Place in 2009, the worst economic time. So
Well, some of the best missions don't always start with logic, right? They start with feeling. They start with the prompt from God, as you mentioned, and really just that sense of obedience. I always say obedience isn't sitting down doing nothing. Obedience is action, and oftentimes the action that doesn't always seem logical at first sight, but it's only in hindsight that you can see the work being done. Um, I do want to talk about Exodus Place a little bit more, but really quick, when it comes to the work you've seen through Exodus Place, being the transitional housing for men, um, with the history of Tim and hearing his story, what are some other stories, or what are some of the more consistent stories or reasons you see how men find themselves in the position of homelessness? Because as you mentioned earlier, sure, we can all make our own decisions up to a certain extent. However, there are also circumstances beyond our control and environments that we find ourselves in that can enhance or encourage, instigate a certain outcome. So, what are some of those factors that you find some of these men unfortunately have to deal with that leads them to find themselves in homelessness?
great, great question, Ted. I it kind of comes down to, I call it the slip. So whether it's me, you, or somebody else, I've had a professional football player that played on the Dolphins there. I've had engineers. I've had a U of M, University of Michigan attorney, um, vice presidents of large companies. The one consistent thing, um, I would say, is that people don't take it serious enough about potentially becoming homeless. They take it for granted. So the guy that comes back from a vacation and was drinking, there's an all inclusive. Hey, I'm doing well financially. Gets back from vacation, keeps the drinking going during his, let's say this, I'm giving an actual situation. Um, uh, um, he's on a golf league and he keeps drinking. He gets arrested, for drunk driving. Ultimately loses his job. The wife ended up booting him out, and he didn't plan. It's kind of, we were talking previous to starting the interview is, you know, I think Mike Tyson stated correctly, is you have to have a plan when you get punched in the face. That plan,
Mhm.
or that plan just goes out of the window. So I see that group, and then the other group I see is that's consistent. So it's kind of a pie chart, Ted. Is we'll see guys that um, weren't doing well in school, had some learning disability, got in fights, did marijuana, drinking, and they just didn't succeed. And a lot of it is, and those individuals, it's just a maturity thing. They weren't mature enough. And so the system leaves them behind. And then all of a sudden, when they're about 28, 30 years old, they wake up and they go, oh crap, I have a felony on me. Um, what the heck was I doing? Like with males, I tell all of our males that come into our facility between, 17, we start at 18 years old, but to 28 years old, I said, guys, you have to think what you're doing. Because I've had one too many males come into our facility, and we only have men because of the bathroom shower situation, but they will make just a dumb decision. We had a guy light a dumpster on fire, and he ended up getting arrested. And I said, sit with him. I said, why'd you light a dumpster on the fire? And he goes, I don't know. So I'm pressing on him because we have a hand up program where they can come in for 30 days free. It's not just you either have to be working, you have to have a job, you have to have something going for you. And this guy wanted to come in for free. And I kept pressing. And eventually, Ted, he goes, Mr. Munger, I don't know. It just was a good idea at that time. And that really resonated with me because I don't know about you. I did some stupid stuff when I was in my 20s and I didn't get caught, you know. But how many times I should have been, you know, life could have turned out a whole lot different.
Yeah.
And so I see people slipping like that, making poor choices. I see the middle-aged guys. We had one engineer. He just wanted to try crack. I go, you don't just try crack. He lost his whole family. And this is the Leave It to Beaver family. I mean, gorgeous kids. I met his twins. I met his son. Nice home. Did crack. Blew a bunch of money. He's homeless. You know, eventually the wife and the family say, hey, you're an anchor. We just can't have you. So we've seen that. Probably the third section of the pie are men that have a low IQ or a low EQ, where they don't react well emotionally with situations, and then a low IQ where they're functional, and that's a tough one. Is the functional people, they're smart enough to manage themselves and take care of themselves, but they don't have the cognitive ability to work consistently. And I know it's a delicate conversation to say, hey, somebody's not that smart, but the reality is I'm not Elon Musk. You know, I'm not that smart. Um, am I functional? Well, it seems that way.
You got on here.
So yeah, so we have three different areas, and it does, you know, alcohol and drugs are a good way to self-medicate. So alcohol and drugs are typically around it, but it's not always around it. So that's one misconception of the homeless.
I appreciate that because I mean the slip could be so real. The inability to plan. I say you know when times are bad you need to prepare for when they're good or wait and pray for them to be good, but when times are good, prepare for when they will be bad because in life we're either in a storm, just getting out of one, or heading into one. Those are the only three constants in life, and being careful for that plan. And the maturity aspect, it is huge because like you, I can relate making some dumb decisions in my teens, in my 20s, and thankfully I didn't get caught, and thankfully I was able to wise up and fix myself and course correct myself and look in the mirror and say, hey Ted, it's time to start doing the things that take you to where you want to go in life. And that was an honest conversation I had to have with myself. So being honest with ourselves is huge. And I know when it comes to Exodus Place, going through your mission statement, the vision, you say something, and you mentioned it prior. This is a hand up, not a handout. Why is that so important? This being a hand up, not a handout.
I love that question because when you're just given something, you don't value it. You don't value it as much. When you have to work to get something accomplished, to earn something, you get self worth, and this, you know, it's modern man to be to respect yourself as a human being, as a man, you need to get out there and work. You need to step it up and be a man. We have the guys, once they get going, they have to pay to stay at Exodus. Now it's a reduced rate, but they actually have to pay. So we're training them that they have to pay. When they pay, I still have a handful of guys that come up and say, Rob, I paid this month. I did it. And we have 135 men cycling through our program every month. So I have 135 guys living there tonight. And a hand up makes all the difference. When you start handing out to people and it's all free, I had one homeless guy tell me, he says, and that successfully came through our program. He goes, the difference between you and a rescue mission that just gives it out freely, he says, I'm going to tell you a story about a little puppy. And I go, okay. He says, this puppy, the people walk by the puppy all the time and stare at it. It's kind of like us. And he goes, it's kind of like people on the street when they walk past us when I was homeless. He goes, the thing is that puppy, they start feeding that puppy, and the puppy just kind of sits there, is cute, gets petted and a little attention, and then the puppy starts getting too fat. Well, no, the puppy can't get up on the next step, so you lift the puppy up on the next step. Well, you keep feeding it, and the puppy doesn't exercise, so the puppy can't get up or down, so he has to get help to get down and help to get up. And eventually that puppy just becomes fat and lazy, and it's getting petted and it's getting attention, but it's getting stared at. He goes, when I was homeless, I was that fat puppy. He goes, what you gave back to me is the confidence to do things for myself and to work with others. And he says, now, he goes, it's at first, and that slip, that first time that you start getting things for free, let's say guys that go back, they lost the job, they told their boss, F it, and they go back to live with mom and dad, or their brother or sister, or grandma and grandpa. And they're in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s. Okay, fed them all. And then all of a sudden, everything's for free. And if it's mama's house, well, mama, she does the grocery shopping, she fixes the dinners. And at first you go, boy, this is nice. I remember as a kid. But that's not helping that man. That's not giving a hand up. That's a hand out. And that actually, that comfort is a cancer to you for your own self-respect. And it actually slips. I've had so many men come because mama is taking care of a 54-year-old man, and mama's in her 80s. And I'm like, she can't afford it anymore. And the guy is giving up on life. Well, there's no self-respect. And so Exodus is about helping people get their self-respect back.
That's amazing that you said that, because I didn't realize until becoming a man myself, um, how much my father trickled that into me. And I was able to tell him last week. He was visiting his granddaughter. My daughter's 10 weeks old this week, and he was able to meet her for the first time. But I took out a stack of papers that my dad gave me when I first moved out and moved away from home, and it was "If" poem by Rudyard Kipling. Yours is the earth and everything in it, and what's more is you be a man, my son. And these other excerpts from dictionaries and encyclopedias, all this knowledge that he gave me. And then before I left home, and before I moved out of my parents' house initially, when I first graduated, I went back home. My dad charged me rent. Um, and then
Amen.
by the time I was leaving, he took that rent and gave it back to me in an account, and was like, "This is what you saved up." And that was him teaching me how to save. So he charged me rent, and I'm like, "All right, here you go." I learned the accountability, the value of a dollar, having to take whatever my my income was and manage that while paying rent. And then afterwards, he's like, hey, this is actually what you were doing. You were saving. So then he taught me how to pay myself first. And that helped me build a little bit of a nest egg for when my car breaks down and I'm not torn and other expenses that have popped up. And here I am years later with a financial foundation and a habit of my wife will say, you have a work ethic that is ingrained. If I'm doing something, I do it correct. Like when we would break leaves with my dad. But that self-respect aspect that you mentioned, if my name is on it, I want it to be good. This podcast it's a Ted Phaeton podcast. I want it to be good. That's what becomes our brand as men, our reputation, right? And it starts with that self-respect. And I love that you said with the hand up versus the handout, we don't value the things that we were just given. And that can so quickly reflect into how we treat ourselves. If we are just given everything, we don't value what we receive. And then we receive that and we no longer value ourselves, which becomes that slippery slope. Amazing. And thank you for sharing that. I want to talk about.
If iron sharpens iron, so does one man sharpen another. But if you're a man and you're alone or listening to this, then who sharpens you? What's going on, guys? Ted Phaeton here, host of the Modern Man Podcast, also founder of the Noble Knights Mastermind Group. And I'm just out here encouraging you to find your circle. Maybe you're on a personal growth journey and nobody around you understands the new mentality that you're possessing. That's okay. You can find an online community that will pour into you, will navigate your goals and navigate your obstacles, share their experiences, resources, and more. Join the Noble Knights Mastermind Group and try us out for free to tap into a community of men helping each other scale up and reach their goals.
Check out themodernmanpodcast.com and transitioning that into the work ethic, the resilience, and reflecting some of the work you've put in. You mentioned taking on Exodus Place. What were some of the challenges and some of the adversities that you had to overcome while building into what it is now? Because before the end of the podcast, Rob, I want to make sure to give you your flowers. Like I said, I looked up some of their stats before coming in, and with the homeless population, 68% of which are men, 653,104 in 2023, from 2007 to 2023. And you mentioned starting in 2009. Between that, sheltered housing for homelessness down 34%, unsheltered homelessness down 92%, total population homelessness in Michigan down 68% from 2007 to 2023. So I want to give you flowers on the work that you're doing, but I do know that that does not come without the sweat and the tears and the ropes, the pulleys, the gears, all behind the scenes. So I would love to hear some of the challenges that you were able to overcome while building Exodus Place into what it is now.
Well, talking about resilience and the whole thing was a struggle. Okay, I took on something that was probably most likely going to fail. Okay, so it's probably most likely going to fail. Exodus, the building, was a sale, a build-to-suit lease situation for the state of Michigan. So 60 plus investors built this building, leased it to the state of Michigan. State of Michigan, after 15 years, they were done with the lease. They decided they were going in the different direction. So the building sat empty for almost 3 years. During that 3 years, the fire suppression system froze. They had winterized the regular plumbing. They didn't winterize the fire suppression. So the whole facility looked like an absolute disaster. Lights were arcing. It flooded. It smelled like mold and mildew because it had been shut up. In 2009, I negotiated, when I had that God moment, to lease the building from the owners for $100 a month. And you go, okay, that's an amazing real estate deal. Well, it was. However, I agreed to pay back the back taxes. The back taxes were almost $300,000, and then I had to redo the whole building. In 2009, all of my banks pulled my line of credits. So I had no line of credit. I had banks calling notes because I was in land development. So land development doesn't push off revenue. So it didn't matter how much equity I had in some of them. Some of them I had almost paid off, but they're calling notes. So life's in a bad situation there. So I take over this building at $100 a month. My paint bill goes right to about $30,000 within 3 months. Okay. The state of Michigan that said, hey, we're going to lease rooms from you because I had a revenue stream set, backed out on the agreement. So they didn't fulfill. They said, we've decided not to go forward. So I have this building, started with 4 homeless guys. 2 of them, one had just come from jail for being locked up for being drunk the night before. 2 were crackheads, and one just had a stupor the night before. So I started as far back as possible. Our first month there, the electric bill, because the systems were all on the old, they didn't have the new LED lights. And then the systems weren't working together because we have about 54 heat pump systems and a chilling tower. My first month's electric bill was $14,000, I believe, some change. So I started from far, far back. So the tenacity to stick with it and then follow a business plan. I had a business plan and goals all written down. So I did a SWOT analysis. I looked at different revenue streams. So Exodus in itself is an absolute miracle. I used to drop the check for the electric at like 5:01, because at 5:01 they would pick up the mail afterwards and they couldn't process the check. So I had basically 2 days to kite that check before it went good. And so I did all these maneuvers, and then every year I would have to go down to the Kent County Assessor's office and negotiate with the assessor not to foreclose on our building for back taxes. So, you talk about tenacity, and like when life gets really tough, we all go through that, and it kind of the difference between winners and losers is, if you quit when you're going after a goal, I lose out. And so with Exodus Place, I had to go through all those tough trials. A couple things happened. One, I know for a fact I can start running a business. Backwards, forwards, I know all the foundational things. Going through those tough times, you hone your skills so well. And so, those tough times are good for you. It's like working out. Hey, run an extra half mile or lift a little bit. Hey, we're going to do 2 more reps. It hurts. I don't want to. Guess what? That's what's going to give you that growth. The other thing is learning how to communicate with different types of people and seeing what their communication styles are. It's so critical to be able to communicate with others and not communicate the way I want to be communicated to, but we have to find out how they want to be communicated to so that we're working with people. And that was the other takeaway for doing Exodus Places. I hear guys will say, I can talk to anybody. And I go, no, you can talk at anybody. But to actually have good dialogue, you need to have some different skills. So those are soft skills. with the objective of executing and doing a really good job or even accomplishing a goal. So those are some challenges I went through at Exodus, and there's many more.
Yeah. No, I no, I could only imagine that's just the tip of the iceberg because anyone watching, listening, and of course sitting there smiling because they could resonate if they're an entrepreneur, if they've gone through those dark times, those uncertain times, those picking up the phone calls, those am I going to make payroll times, then they know what that struggle is like. What was what was your why through most of it? Where I'm sure you are familiar with the Viktor Frankl quote, "He who
Oh
has
yeah.
a why can withstand almost any how." What was that anchor that kept you grounded and honed in through the thick of that storm that you were going through?
My why was I knew if I did my job right, I would make a permanent, um, I guess, nick in the universe as far as a place where people can be positively affected and have trans really transitional life changes in their life that could change them forever. I mean, it's different. Like if let's just say I build a development and there's 100 lots in it, that's all nice and they can spend time. But to actually change somebody and provide them ability to um, grow in their life, which affects, let's say their children, future generations. And so that was my why is, and then our community, it's so important for a community to have uh, an asset. The homeless in so many places, they're a liability. You look at Oakland, you look at Seattle, they're a liability. But if you can do a paradigm shift, and that's where I looked at my why is if we can start treating people like people and like humans, and we can also teach them to value themselves. A lot of the homeless, they don't value themselves, which is a shame. And they're so worthwhile. They're people. And so that was my, I guess the overall why is it was just to make a positive difference in humanity that would be replicated and we could keep doing this.
Yeah. No, that's amazing. It's often something bigger than ourselves that gives us that resilience and that courage to keep pushing forward. And you mentioned a couple times of, these are people and the value that they don't have within themselves that you say is heartbreaking. And many folks can look at the homeless population and put them in and chunk them into a demographic, whether it be a race, whether it be a religion, whether it be just
It's
a discardment of something so surface level, especially in how the the times we live in this country. It's so quick to discard someone based off of one aspect of them. Um, Talk about what you've been able to see at Exodus Place, the different men that come into Exodus Place, how you guys come together, how differences melt away when really the only thing at hand is this mission of us transitioning from homelessness into self-respect.
well, it's funny. You watch the news, I watch where I live and different things. Well, you know, differences don't come up a whole lot where I live, but, um, on the news and stuff, it's not black or white. It's not Indian background, Asian background. Um, at Exodus, we we really put the judgment on a back burner. Um, you know, a sin's a sin. And I never really grasped that until I got involved with the homeless and then through maturity. It doesn't matter if I stole, a pencil and they stole the car. It was a sin. It's just one of those things. And so for Exodus, we come together um, as people to help each other. And the labeling just melts away at Exodus. It's just it's a funny thing. I have new staff that'll come and they'll start working, and some will start labeling, and I go, hey, it's not those guys, because I'm one of those guys. Okay, I've done stupid stuff. We'll continually do stupid stuff. Um, we're a we here. We're a team, and that's like, and our country, you know, and in the world, I travel a fair amount. So Paris, London, Carousel. I was in, and when you're talking to people, um, it's funny traveling. More of it's a we than it's a demographic. It's a sex. It's just, or economic levels. And so at Exodus, our culture is to just really focus on working together. And like with men, nobody's going to come really to try to help that many men. We're not cute, cuddly. If I was going to donate, you talk about your daughter, 10-week-old baby. I mean, you see that and you go, hey, we're having a medical thing and we're trying to raise some money. I'll be one of the first ones to raise it, give you money. But, so men are not a really easy demographic to get donations and support for. And so I tell them, I said, because of that, we need to bootstrap ourselves up so we work together. And if we're fighting amongst each other, that's just counterproductive. And we need to work together. And so by working together, we don't see a lot of, one guy's taller, another one's short. I mean, there's more joking around at Exodus and saying, hey, we need to work together than friction. In fact, to give you an idea, we just had the first physical attempt to somebody punch somebody in almost 2 years. So 135 men, murders, kidnappers, criminal sexual conduct, felons, alcoholics, PTSD, bipolar, schizophrenic. And in 2 years, we haven't had anything until just this last weekend. And even that, it wasn't a fight. It was, de-escalated. And so they all realize we need to be a solution together.
Yeah. I identify that. I've heard from those who were in combat, veterans, those who've um, been in a workout with someone. If you go to a good workout, you don't know the person to your left, to your right, but I'll tell you what, halfway through it, you might look at them and you both are suffering. And the reality is that's where the bond is made. When you give men a mission, that takes precedent. The differences don't matter. And even in Navy SEAL, we've had on the Modern Man podcast and in the conference, he said, his fellow Navy SEALs, he says, there's Navy SEALs, there's other partners of mine. I wouldn't trust them with my wife, but I trust them to secure the mission, take care of the job, and that's why I go to battle with them, because you can trust them to the mission. And the reality is, we are more alike than we are different, and we are all on the same mission of elevating ourselves to be that beacon of light. Because most of us just want to know that we are worth it, and that we can accomplish those goals that we set out for ourselves. One of my last questions is, what do you think it is these men need the most, to maybe prevent them from leaning into that slip, or help them get out even faster?
Don't give up on yourself. Our society right now, whether it's homeless or young men, well, any man right now, I'm watching it in all stages, is men are giving up on themselves. And they got this story, well, it's too hard, I'm not worth it, it's fine just to get by. And those are all lies. And so anybody that's struggling right now, I would say take a big gulp, and really, double down on yourself.
Hmm.
I mean, because it's like on an airplane, you put the mask on first, and then you put on the passenger, and it's not being narcissistic. It's just, you know, it's that reality is you got to take care of yourself. That's why I like your podcast and what you stand for is you're given the tools so that your self-worth starts coming out, because by building it up in your abilities, then you can help others. But if you don't build it up, if you don't feel like you're a worthwhile investment, which is absolutely crazy, we're with ourselves 24/7. It doesn't close on Christmas or Easter, you know. And so these podcasts like yours, it gives people the equipment and the mental fortitude to really work on themselves, and then you can make a bigger difference and bigger impact in the world and in other people's lives.
Fantastic. No, I agree wholeheartedly, Rob. I want to really quick make sure our audience knows how to find you, connect with you, contribute to Exodus Place and the mission of you helping these men transition from homelessness into that self-respect and the power that they have ahead of them. So, please, what are the best ways for folks to connect and donate?
Best way to connect with Exodus Place is exodusplace.org. So we have a contact page, and you can see all about Exodus, which is phenomenal place. We do a global system, so you guys can see all that. And then for me personally, robmunger.com. So that's ROBBMUNGER.com. And and I always respond to emails. So if somebody emails me, I'm right on it. As far as YouTube and other things, we kind of just push content out. So I'm not as good on that.
Yeah.
So I'm a little old school.
Hey, no worries with that, and I'll have those websites, the links in the show notes for folks to open that up and just jump in. And Rob, last question. I usually save this one for the end. It's the heaviest one, but something tells me you've probably got this answer lined up. You probably know what's coming. But what is something you've seen or something that's happened to you that shapes the way you view the world as a man?
Um, I guess probably a lot. When I was younger, I wasn't as fast running in school, and I had dyslexia, and so my self image of myself was slow, not fast. Then got, you know, as you develop, and then all of a sudden um, through training and everything else, have turned my life around. And so what drives me and what's changed me is seeing how I can make a positive impact in other people's lives. Like people made a positive impact in my life, and showed caring. So I guess it comes down to caring.
Yeah, that's
Might not be the
fantastic.
best answer for you. Sorry.
No, I think that is the best answer because um relating in terms of you mentioned self-image and how we see ourselves, how we speak to ourselves shapes our reality. And if we had more caring of self, we would have more prosperity in life. um, so entrepreneur, corporate culture coach, real estate developer, author, and founder of Exodus Place, Rob Munger, out of Grand Rapids, Tennessee, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you, Ted.
It's been an absolute pleasure, and I want to recap some of the gems that you left along the way really quick while we wrap up, because I know a lot of folks, a lot of the guys are working out while listening to this, or driving, or maybe cleaning up the house while mom is away. So, prompting from God. There's oftentimes we get this inkling, this feeling, this sign from God, the universe, whatever the listener wants to put their stock in. But whenever we get that prompt, are we going to act or are we going to wait? And it doesn't always make sense. Just to fast forward in my notes, when Rob said, probably most likely going to fail, and just taking that prompt and running with it. Beware of the slip, those little things that can lead into an outcome that you didn't see coming, or the drift as they call it in the book, Outwitting the Devil. We can fall into it so quickly if we don't live with intention. Be mature, grow up. The decisions we made as adolescents is when we were adolescents. We are grown men now. It's time to make better decisions. And also think about what we're doing. Have a plan, have an intention. And then when you're given something, you don't value it. The juice is worth the squeeze when you put the work in. That's when the fruit is the sweetest. Helps you build self-respect. And then don't quit. If you have a goal, if you have an outcome, if you have something you're going for, be resilient and don't quit. And I'm one of those guys. Are you labeling? Are you looking at what's different, or are you identifying that you are just the same? You are more the same than you are different. This is not a they thing and an us thing. It's a we thing. It's a we thing together. Lean in, care for self, and don't give up on yourself. Guys, thank you so much for making it to the end. Rob, thank you again. And as always, I'm going to ask that you hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, share this episode with somebody that you know can get value from it as well. And of course, leave us a rating to let us know how we're doing. It's the only way we can improve. But as I always say at the end of the episode, everybody wants the sunshine, but they don't want the rain. But you can't get the pleasure without first the pain. Let's grow.